Okay, hello and welcome to the live stream for March 13th, 2019. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that we do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you are new here, welcome. And if you are returning here, welcome. So before I get going on anything, technology has been really glitchy for me this whole week. Is anybody else having major issues with Facebook? Or is it just me? Please let me know. I have done everything I can think of. It doesn't work on my phone. It doesn't work on my computer, either computer. It's just chaos. So hooray, high quality distraction, sim lover, James, Dandelion. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, James is saying, okay, yeah, Facebook is bad today. Okay, good. Good to know. I'm glad it's not just me. Oh, it's been so frustrating. Jeanette, Mariposa, MK, Karen, congratulations. Karen says, I hit the halfway mark for a year for doing Spanish on Duolingo, 26 and a half weeks done. Wow, that's awesome. Good for you. Oh, Pamela saying Instagram has been out most of the day, but Facebook has been okay for her. Gosh. Josephine says, hi, you just saved me from calling my narcissist. Well, I'm glad that you're here and that we were able to do that for you. Siddharth, welcome. Yeah. Says long time. Hope you're fine. I'm doing pretty well. Can't complain. It's good to see you. Mohammed says, hello, everyone from Paris. Oh, that's a good idea. Karen says, Dana, you might want to try to uninstall and reinstall Facebook. Yeah, maybe I will do that. I just got a new phone. Super excited about that. Finally, I don't even know. I have a very old iPhone. It might even be like the iPhone 5. It's really old. It has no storage on it. And I just sucked it up and bought a new phone. I bought the, what is it? Like Moto G7, I think. So I'm getting away from iPhones. I'm tired of the whole storage issue. So something else I get to learn this week. Josephine, well, thank you. Says, I want you to know that you have done so much for me. Well, thank you. I'm glad. And yeah, I'm glad that my videos and have been able to help. I think going through all this stuff is hard enough, and it's so much easier when you're not alone, and especially when you have this whole community of people for the live stream. I think or the support group, it's just so much easier. Let's see, Rich, hello, welcome. Sim Lover says, is it normal to think about your ex narcissist a lot? We've been broken up for about 4-ish months. He's kind of stalking me. So, I mean, that doesn't help. And my mom thinks I really shouldn't care anymore. Well, yeah, it's normal to think about somebody who's caused you pain or painful events. It's sort of like if you get bullied at school, you're not going to just get over that kind of stuff people think about for quite a while. And the fact that he's not even really out of your life yet. So it's really hard to move on and heal when he's still there, especially if he's still stalking you. So, that part of your brain is you're still in fight or flight mode because, he's still there. So, yeah, the way that you feel is, in my opinion, completely normal and appropriate given the situation. And hopefully he will eventually end up just leaving you alone and moving on. But in the meantime, I would document everything, and I would just be very aware of your surroundings and take added precaution to not interact with him or not be around him. Josephine says, I would like to know how long this obsession lasts. Well, as far as like thinking about them, a lot of Here's the thing, they say time heals all wounds, and in large part that is true. Time definitely lessens the pain of painful wounds, but one of the ways that we can accelerate that process is what we do with that time. So keeping yourself busy, filling up the void. I think a lot of people, when they struggle to move forward and heal, they struggle to stop thinking about them. It's because they haven't filled that void with anything positive, that they're just sitting at home waiting around in order to fully feel like their old selves before they get back out there and start living their life. And that, and that's a hard way to be, because you could be at home for years or decades doing that. So it really helps if you can get out there, start channeling that energy into something positive, whatever that might be. Volunteering, it really helps to channel it into something positive. So volunteering, joining meetup groups, doing things where you're not talking about your ex, where you're not engaging in any of that. So support groups, I'm a big fan of support groups. I think there's definitely a time and place for them. But I think it's also very important that we're able to shift out of that, at least for a few hours a day. It really makes a huge difference, because when a person's fresh out of these relationships, and when I say fresh out, I would say really within like the first 3 to 6 months is what I would consider fresh out. When they're fresh out and they're trying to understand everything that's happened, they're going to the internet, they're joining support groups, they're watching videos. Learning about all of this is a very necessary stage in healing, just understanding what happened and getting that validation. But like I said, I think it's also important. What can happen is a person stays there, is they feel only understood by other people that have gone through this, which I get it, because most other people don't understand. But the danger in that is then the kind of the commonality that everybody has in that group is their ex, is the pain. And then you kind of end up unintentionally really like building your whole life around this. And it's like the one thing that people talk about, it kind of feeds that fixation. So it can really help, in my opinion, to make some time to do something totally different, take up hobbies, knitting, foreign language, volleyball, Chinese cooking, whatever it is, and do something totally different where you're not talking about this. It just gives your brain a chance to rest, and it reminds you that there is life after this. So engaging in those kinds of things, I feel really helps people to move forward. Okay, let's see. Case of Love says, please, does the narcissist treat you like you're the narcissist? I asked my child's father for help, and now he's very passive aggressive and is treating me the way one is advised to communicate with a narcissistic co-parent. Yeah, that's very common. It's very common for them even during abuse, because here's the thing with narcissists, it's all about them all of the time. They are never wrong. They are never the problem. If you can fully wrap your mind around like what that looks like in motion, it makes understanding their behavior a lot easier. So in their mind, you are the problem. In their mind, they've been abused. In their mind, whatever abuse they did to you was justified. So that it's crazy making. And sometimes they're very sadistic and they're very malicious, and they might not even really think that. They're just doing this to kind of provoke their target. They'll just stay absolutely cool, calm, and collected and just be like, oh my goodness, you're boy, you're the difficult one. And I don't know, like, I really feel we need to get that in writing. And there's just kind of this element of like condescension with the way that they're interacting with you, which is, there is no, there's no healing, there's no validation, there's nothing that comes from these kinds of people except more pain. So I would try to not let it faze you. Just realize this is just how they are. And and to try to not get, agitated by it as much as you possibly can. Or if you do get agitated, don't show them. Just act like it's no big deal, that their response is completely fine, and then come to here or a support group or your friend or your therapist or whoever and vent. But the more of a reaction you give them, the more it feeds them. Yeah, Bonnie says, yep, condescension, absolutely. Yeah, and certainly no dignity or respect. H1 says, I think these toxic people know what they're doing. I've had kind of a wide range of them in my life. And I think there really truly is a spectrum. I think some do know exactly what they're doing, and they really enjoy pushing their targets and breaking people. And then I think some are just absolutely clueless, and you're talking about like just different levels of dysfunction. It's all a problem, but yeah, some of them are more self-aware than others. But even though that, and I think this even validates our whole experience even more, because even though there are those ones that are self-aware, that know exactly what they're doing, they don't change. They just get worse. It's the weirdest thing, because you would think, like, if they have awareness of, hey, there's certain things about me that are problematic, that they would care, that they would want to change them, that they'd want to have a good relationship, that they'd want to have a good relationship with their children, or, you know what I mean? Have a good life, a normal life, and they don't. It's not what they're about. Okay, let's see. Cha-cha-cha. Let's scroll up here. Yeah, Sim Lover said, yeah, my ex would abuse me. Then when I snapped, he'd say I abused him, and he'd say it all with a smirk. He also abused the girl before me. I've heard things from the girl's mother. He repeated with me. Yes, and he'll continue to do this. Like, this is just the way that he's wired. He's got all kinds of stuff going on, all kinds of major dysfunction that's causing this real pathological worldview and the way that he interacts with other people. Especially, and I think for most people in general, the relationships that we're most emotionally invested in, generally with our significant other, that's when this stuff really tends to come out. So they might be able to hide it at work. They might be able, or it might not even, they might not get triggered so much at work, but it's these close relationships that bring up just all that unprocessed dysfunction within them. So yeah, he'll keep doing this. I mean, it's not just going to be you and his ex. It's been women before her, and it'll be women after her. So, and it's bound to be that, right? Because it's how any of us tends to go about doing things, unless we know different, unless we have that acknowledgement of, hey, what I'm doing is a problem. It's a problem for me, or it's a problem from other people. There's no motivation to change. And if this is one of the reasons narcissists don't change. If they don't experience pain from their actions, if they feel entitled and justified to do whatever they want to do and treat people however they want to treat them, they're going to keep doing that. So that's why they don't change. If a person has some sincere degree of awareness and they're like, oh man, boy, I didn't realize that for the past X number of years, I was acting this way, and this is really a problem. And, I can't believe I'm just now realizing this. And that person's actually motivated to change. They're taking the steps to change, because change is always difficult, and they're accountable for their behavior, and they're willing to take an honest look at themselves. Then change is possible. But it's a long, complicated, difficult process for any of us, especially for people that don't see that there's anything wrong with what they're doing. Okay, let's see. Oh, you do? Anna says, I sleep every night with Thrive After Abuse on autoplay. Well, thank you. That's That's cute. That makes me happy. I've been working with, there's a guy, I don't know if he's on here tonight. I think he watches the videos later. His name's Paul. And we've been wanting to make some relaxation videos for quite a while now. And I think the holdup has been more me than him, but I'd like to be able to do a playlist for people that do listen to these videos where it's something more, I guess, more healing, and it's set to nice music and all of that. So hopefully in the near future, we'll have those done. Galactic. Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it. He says, do you think narcissists have short-term memory loss or selective memory? Thoughts? It's starting to look like a disability that can't be controlled, or they are literal bullies, like they're half awake. Well, I don't know if it's necessary. Well, I guess you could say it's selective memory. Whenever any of us are not comfortable with reality, our brain kind of unconsciously deploys a whole wide variety of defense mechanisms. And denial is a big one. But let me see, here's some more. So we have, so there's different degrees. There's different levels of defense mechanisms. There's more primitive ones, and then there's what's considered more like mature or less primitive ones. So the primitive ones are denial, regression, acting out, disassociation, compartmentalization, projection. The more mature ones are repression, displacement, intellectualization, rationalization. And let's see, mature defense mechanisms are sublimation, self-assertion, suppression, compensation, altruism, anticipation, affiliation, and self-observation. So those are kind of interesting. So you can see with a lot of, when we're talking about deep dysfunction, you're interacting with a person who's basically going through life with these very primitive defense mechanisms. And this stuff is really, it's very immature behavior, and it's very deep inside of them. And not to say that the disassociation is, disassociation's common for trauma, but generally over time, as a person starts handling it, that disassociation, becomes channeled and becomes healed, and we're starting to process it. So please don't think that you're immature or primitive if you're disassociating. That's very common for trauma. So yes, so back to your question. It's starting to look like a disability that can't be controlled. And it's difficult because in certain ways they can control their behavior. There is that awareness of what's right and what's wrong. There is this understanding of appropriate behavior. It's more, their problem is they feel entitled and justified. So it's sort of like a little kid who wants something. They're very impulsive. They're very in the moment. They don't have regard for other people. It's all about them. They're lacking in empathy. They're lacking in remorse. All of these problematic like behaviors and these mindsets contribute to what they're doing. They're aware of what they're doing because they're lying about it. That's how you can tell. So when a person's when you sincerely don't think that you did anything wrong, people don't lie about it. And then if somebody says like, oh my gosh, you did the wrong thing, that wasn't supposed to happen, blah, blah, blah. Then they're like, oh my gosh, yikes, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. And then they own it. That's kind of the response of a mature person. But for them, they lie about everything because they know what they're doing is a problem. But then where it gets tricky is they start using all these different defense mechanisms to do these mental gymnastics to make themselves okay with what they're doing. And that's when you see some stuff that's really wild. The projection, the accusing you of things that they're doing. They're accusing you of cheating. They're accusing you of lying or of wanting to hurt them or of what have you. and that's crazy making when you're on the other side of that. Or they up and leave you for somebody, and then they make it seem like they're the victim. And they've destroyed you financially, emotionally. They've abandoned you. They've abandoned the children. They've caused all kinds of pain. And yet in their mind, they're still the victim. It's mental gymnastics. So, it's to the degree that they can really help. This is, I think, up for debate. But all we can really do is you just got to get some distance, because there is no functional relationship possible with a person that's at that level of dysfunction. They're just, and it can sound so harsh to say, but they are so far down that scale of self-awareness that's needed in order to become functional. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, Bonnie says, yeah, they lie, therefore they know what they're doing. Yeah, and Belle of Amherst says, and I can't believe they ever treat another human being with such cruelty. I just do not get it. Wow, cruelty. Yeah, you're really dealing with a person that never, for whatever reason, was able to develop a solid sense of self. There is no healthy ego that was ever formed. And so now they're just compensating for all of this. They don't feel good about themselves. So they they have sex with a bunch of people, or they spend lots of money, or they're continually telling everybody how wonderful they are, or they're always trying to just make it seem like it's really them trying to convince themselves that they're okay. But to everybody else, well, I guess depending on the severity of like how outward their behavior is, to most other people, like, man, this person's really grandiose. They just keep trying to impress me. Do they really think this is working? This is ridiculous. It comes across as immature and ridiculous when you start seeing the stuff for what it is. So, but yeah, there is no depth, like there is no end to their cruelty, because it's all about them, whatever they want in the moment. And for normal, decent people, I think it's really hard to understand. It's hard to understand that. Like, how could other people just not take people into consideration, especially if the other people are innocent, like children or animals or elderly that are, they're not, like, they didn't do anything, and how can they do this? How can they go about, preying on children to hurt them? Or how can they go about preying on the elderly to scam them out of their life savings, or to do all these? It's so hard to understand, because I think, again, normal, decent people, we kind of had the mindset of, well, if somebody causes another person pain, then there's got to be some sort of reason for it. Like something happened, and then that's their reaction to it. Sort of like, well, other people will treat you like how you treat them. And that's not the case at all when you're dealing with deeply dysfunctional people like this. Like there's not enough love and care and compassion and concern that you can give them that will ever change how they interact with you. There is no earning their love. There is no earning their respect. There is no earning any of this. They're just deeply dysfunctional people, and distance is the only way to really have them in your life, and ideally not have them in your life. But if you have to interact with them, distance. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, Sim Lover says, yes, my ex is very, very childish. He'll throw temper tantrums if he doesn't get what he wants. Yep, that's very common. And it's wild when you start seeing this kind of stuff for what it is. And you're like, how is an adult doing this? Like, this is ridiculous. But that's why you're not dealing with an adult is why. Abuse-free. I'm glad you're here. Okay. Abuse-free said, Dana, I'm interested in getting your 3-year journal, but being in India, shipping is huge. Can you help me with an e-version? None of the sites are offering it. I will have to figure out how to do something like that. Can you post your email in here and I'll see? I might be able, I don't know. I'm not tech savvy, but I think I can find somebody to figure that out. So abuse-free 3-year. Wait a minute. Did you want the insight journal or the gratitude journal? And I guess, can you even leave your email in the chat? I'm not sure. Maybe that's not the best idea. Can you email me with it? You're going to get an autoresponder email, but I will see it. So I will look for it in the next few days here. You can email me, dana@thriveafterabuse.com. And then I'll make a note to myself. Some sort of like e-file, check email. Yeah, James is, yeah, she should be able to, but that's probably not the best for chat. Okay, yeah, I thought about that after I said that that could wind up with them getting a lot of emails, unwanted emails from trolls and stuff. So yeah, abuse-free, please email me. And they're talking about a print version. There should, if there's any print version of e-print versions of my books, they are pirated. So let me know if you come across any, because that shouldn't be a thing. Okay, let's see. Oh, I wanted to share with you guys a fantastic comment that somebody left the other day in my videos. This is from Kayla Marie, and she says that she became a codependent and self-loathing person. Both of her parents, but she says, well, I'll just read it in her words. She says, I became a codependent and self-loathing person. Both of my parents are emotionally abusive. I love them, but I can now finally accept that they cannot love me. At the time, I didn't know I deserved love and felt like I was being arrogant for thinking that. I was taught to be ashamed of the things I was good at. I'm sure many of us were. It feels like being happy is wrong, so you reduce your spirit for acceptance within an unacceptable situation. It's twisted, but you are not. And that's why you will be okay despite the reasons to not be. Looking back, I am glad I was a doormat to so many people for so long. I am glad my spirit was strong enough to get me through, and I understand I became that way to survive. I am going to thrive, and so will you. Fight for your rights, and that fight starts with unlearning all you know about worth. Love to all. I just thought that was so well said and just so beautiful. I just wanted to share that with you guys. So, okay. So let me hop back in the chat here. Kevin says, my mother actually stomped her feet yesterday like a child. WTH, she's almost 70. Yeah. Age, they don't mature. They're stuck. Any one of us, life is about growth, and true growth, emotional growth requires introspection. It requires honesty. It requires being comfortable as possible with reality, it's difficult. It's so difficult to turn inward and examine different parts of ourselves, because human beings, we're all wired to do what we think is right. If we don't, then we have cognitive dissonance. So we're all hardwired at birth to line up. Our thoughts and our actions have to line up. If they don't, that's when these mental gymnastics come into play. And for I would say probably for anybody other than psychopaths. Like psychopaths know what they're doing is wrong and they just don't care. But everybody else, narcissists, sociopaths, they have to do these mental gymnastics. So I think understanding that, like, you can kind of see if a person if they never turn inward, if they never get to that place where they're comfortable about examining these things about themselves, then there's no emotional evolution. Like, they just stay locked at whatever age they are when they stop growing. Emily asked, can narcissistic people also have borderline personality disorders? There's a lot of overlap with, if you back it up a little bit and think about these different disorders in terms of problematic behaviors, because that's really what it is. It's just, there's a series of problematic behaviors that are then called a personality disorder. But we all have, these are all human behaviors and they're all on a spectrum. What makes this stuff personality disordered is it's so pervasive, it's so persistent, and it's so problematic that it's causing them problems in their life, whether it's either causing them problems in their life or causing problems to other people around them, whether they realize it or not. So I guess it depends on what you're talking about. Okay, Emily was saying it's terrifying sometimes because they change so quickly mood-wise. Yeah, there's, like I said, there's a lot of overlap. The shifting moods, especially if it's like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of stuff, if it's abusive, where it goes from fine to just off the wall, that, to me, I guess I view borderline personality disorder mood changes like a little bit different than that. It's not, I wouldn't say that it's like abuse falls within that. I know that borderline personality disorder is one of those disorders where I don't think that there's a very solid understanding or application of it. And a lot of people that have been through trauma, either as a child or as an adult, are commonly diagnosed with it. And so I'm always hesitant to even kind of get into that because it can be very re-victimizing for some people. So that's kind of why I like to back up the conversation and just talk about behavior. But the quick shifting moods, that's standard abusive behavior, abuse mentality behavior. Here's the difference in my opinion with people that have borderline personality disorder. Their moods are shifting for other reasons, generally because they're getting triggered, like something's going on. With an abuser, they tend to go from fine, like Dr. Jekyll, to Mr. Hyde whenever they don't get their way, whenever somebody else acts in a way that they're not okay with. It's all about control. Like, I wouldn't say that borderline personality disorder has to do with control. To me, that's more like narcissism and antisocial personality. I don't know. I'd be curious to hear from what other people have to say about that. Yeah, Jack says he was involved in a BPD recovery support group. Some were very kind, others were vicious as hell. He was there for DBT resources for CPTSD. I think because a lot of these behaviors, there is so much overlap that you can get people that are more on just the antisocial spectrum, because there's a lot of stuff, you know, you hear people talk about, oh, their abuser, like they threaten suicide. There's the kind of a lot of behaviors that would normally fall under what would be considered borderline personality disorder. But these are also a lot of abuse tactics. So again, this is just my opinion. From what I've seen, the different people when I was working as a nurse that I've seen as borderline personality disorder, the suicidal ideation, it's like self-harm, that was not due to trying to punish. It wasn't about control. It wasn't about trying to punish somebody else or anything like that. It was more of it was their own pain, and you know, their own pain and them just trying to express it. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't about control. So, but again, this kind of stuff can be really difficult to see, and you can have 10 different people in a room and 10 different people perceive it all very differently. That's what can be such a challenge. And I would say the vast majority of people who are, even us, who are, if we're not on the receiving end of abuse from another person, our perception of their behavior is going to be really skewed. So it's just a really difficult thing for anybody to see accurately unless you're on the receiving end of it at the time. Because there's been patients, like I said, I've worked with who have had borderline personality disorder, have antisocial personality disorder, some really, really like problematic people. They were totally fine with me. I've had different patients that were not fine, but it's not like you would go into a room with them and you would know immediately, wow, that person's a sociopath. Like, not at all. They just came across like people, you know? So you have to there has to be some sort of like triggering event, or you have to be their target to really see that stuff. Okay, let's see here. I feel like I was going to tell you guys something else and I totally forgot. Catherine says, I have been told that some people with CPTSD get diagnosed as borderline personality disorder. I think it's more common than not, to be honest with you. There's such a huge, again, just my opinion, I feel like there's such a huge trauma component to probably a lot of mental illness and a lot of personality disorders. And I think as modern medicine and society goes, we're just at that forefront of understanding how to effectively treat trauma, how to even identify trauma, let alone effectively treat it. So yeah, if you kind of back up and you look at a lot of the behaviors that different clinicians are looking at for borderline personality disorder, you can see like, wow, boy, I can see how this really fits in with PTSD kind of stuff. There's, kind of a series of, there's impulsive behavior usually. There's a series of, they're very emotionally reactive. There's a series of kind of short-lived or fragmented relationships. There's, kind of this shift. I heard the other day probably the best explanation of borderline personality disorder and the thinking, and it was that the borderline, the line that people are walking with this is the line between neurosis and psychosis. So that neurosis part is very much a part of PTSD. It's that overly emotional, it's that, just kind of level of intensity about different things. And the psychosis is just kind of this break from reality. Well, that can be disassociation, that can be different kind of more mild delusions. which a lot of trauma survivors have. They tend to kind of create this whole alternate reality, or maybe not even a whole reality. They might create these different fantasies to engage in so they don't have to deal with the present moment. Again, this is stuff that we all do. It's just the degree and frequency that certain people are doing it, then that's when it becomes a problem. But personally, I am not a fan of, I think anybody that's been through something traumatic, I just don't like the words personality disorder. I think that can just be so emotionally devastating for a person. It just sounds like such this identity foreclosure of your personality is disordered, like it sounds so harsh and hopeless. And for people that have gone through trauma, that kind of language, I think, could just really push a fragile person over the edge. So I like to view that kind of stuff more as traits, because again, like, this stuff is normal. If you go through something traumatic, you're going to have a traumatic response to it. And I think it's more helpful to be able to see, okay, how are you as an individual responding to this? Because we all respond to these things differently. Some people might have PTSD. Some people might not. They might be totally fine. Some people, if they do have PTSD, they might be really hypervigilant. Other people might not. Other people might have their issues more with nightmares or with distrusting people. So different people have different personality changes from different events like this. And so I don't know. I hope I'm making sense. That's not completely random. It makes some degree of sense. But yes, long story short, yes, I think there's a lot of people that have been through trauma, have PTSD, and they get diagnosed as borderline personality disorder. But keep in mind, people can also have more than one thing going on. So a person can have PTSD and they can have borderline personality disorder, and they can have bipolar disorder, and they can have obsessive compulsive disorder, and they can have diabetes, and they can have cancer, and they can be pregnant. So do you see, most people rarely have just kind of one thing, especially if you're talking mental health, because all this stuff is so interconnected. So it's really common if you've got somebody that's, let's say, has PTSD, it's PTSD, but it's also generally going to be anxiety, and it's going to be depression, and it's probably going to be insomnia, and it's probably going to be some sort of inflammation or chronic pain. It could be eating disorders. Either they've gained a significant amount of weight or they've lost a significant amount of weight, and they could be struggling with binge eating disorder. They could be struggling with anorexia or bulimia. It just goes on and on. So all of this stuff is so interconnected. It's very rarely just one thing. It doesn't, and again, like if you go in for mental health and then you start hearing like, you like read this list of diagnoses, you're like, oh my gosh, are you kidding? Like, I got binge eating disorder, and I'm also, they're saying that I'm bulimic, and that I have PTSD, and I have anxiety, and then I have generalized anxiety disorder as well. And I have borderline personality disorder. And they also think I'm bipolar. Like, to get all of that is if it's not framed in an empowering context, then that's really harsh. And I've never seen anything positive come from that. So I guess what I'm saying too is, if this describes anybody here, please understand that if your awareness of these different things is half the battle. So if you're aware of different traits within yourself, and you're like, yeah, that's me, yikes, that's kind of scary, or yeah, that's something that I'd like to work on, then by all means you can work on it. None of this stuff is telling you that you are permanently stuck here and that you will never heal, and that you don't let anybody else define you, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, you define you, and you decide what you want to work on and what you don't want to work on. And yeah. Okay. So Boy, Alex says, can a meth addiction make borderline personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder worse? Absolutely. Absolutely. Meth makes everything worse. And substances in general, sometimes you can have a radical personality change for the worse with substances, but a lot of the times it can make a person more of what they already are in a negative way. So if a person's already abusive, then they're going to be even more abusive. But you could also have a person who's never been abusive become abusive when they're on drugs like meth, cocaine, PCP, stuff like that. So, yeah. And regardless too, with hard drugs, when a person's using hard substances like that, I think it's really important to realize that they have stuff going on. Like they need to get that resolved, and that no sincere, authentic connection, relationship can be made with a person when they're a substance abuser or when they're using substances like meth. It's just not going to work. So I see a lot of people that kind of feel like, well, how do I know? Like, how do I know if they're not just, maybe they're just an alcoholic, quote unquote, right? Or they're just a meth addict, or it's like, how do I know if they're really a narcissist or a sociopath, or if the problem is this addiction? And the reality is it's going to take a person clean time, a significant amount of clean time. I would say at least 18 months before you can really even begin to tell. But again, like, I think it's important to realize there's no healthy relationship possible unless there's a healthy person possible. And so this isn't to say that they're bad or wrong or any of that. It's just when you're dealing with somebody with an addiction, you're dating the addiction. You're not dating them. So, okay, let's see here. And that's a really great point. MFA says substance abuse stunts emotional growth to begin with. Yes. Yes, it does. And it teaches a person a whole bunch of kind of maladaptive behaviors. They get used to manipulating. They get used to lying. They can become very good at it. So not only does it stun a person emotionally, but then they also learn this whole really problematic skill set. So, yeah, I definitely would. Let's see, somebody just said something in the chat. Liz says, and it's the only thing that numbs the pain sometimes. Yeah, and for some people, for a lot of survivors of abuse, addiction is very common for that exact same reason. So, again, it's not to say that, I think that we have to have a certain level of self-compassion for going through everything that we've been through, and realizing, you know what, we all coped in the best way we could at the time. And that's it. And giving yourself grace and moving forward, and hopefully building up some more kind of adaptive coping skills in the future. And yeah, moving forward. Okay. Katrina says, after abuse, how can we differentiate overthinking from actual problems? Well, let's see here. Overthinking from actual problems. I guess, so set me straight here, because how I'm understanding your question is overthinking tends to be about actual problems. So I guess there's the problem, right? Let's say, for example, the problem is, I don't know, you don't have money for rent or your bills or whatever this month. Like, that's an actual problem. Overthinking about it is then rehashing that dozens and dozens and dozens of times, and you're just spinning in circles. So, yeah, I guess you'll have to kind of give me some clarity. If you find yourself thinking about the same thing over and over again, sometimes it can help to just keep a journal. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can just be like a spiral notebook by the side of your bed, or you can even do voice memos on your phone and just talk to yourself about what's going through your mind. Because when we tend to engage in that overthinking, especially if it's very focused on a certain thing, that can be very insightful. It can provide a lot of information about what's going on with you. Because when we do that overthinking, it tends to be anxiety. So that anxiety is coming out. So, okay, well, why? Why is it coming? It's trying to come from a place of curiosity and not judgment about what you're doing. Because a lot of this stuff just flies beneath our surface of consciousness. It's this kind of subconscious or unconscious behavior. So that can provide a lot of insight. Okay, let's see. Katrina says, I mean issues with people. Oh, okay, I get you. When I mean issues with people, when they seem to be doing toxic, when they seem to be toxic or doing things that you perceive or mean as or mean, doing things you perceive as mean or hateful. Okay, this is a great question, and here you go. Okay, we don't have to try to figure out their behavior. We don't have to discern, do they mean to be mean? Do they mean to be hateful? Is this problematic? Is it me? Is it them? That'll make anybody nuts, because you're just going to run in circles over and over and over again. And other people, then you start asking other people and they're going to say, oh no, you're making too big of a deal out of this. This person, that they didn't mean it that way. They're not like that. I don't see anything wrong, blah, blah, blah. What will set you free from all of that is turning inward. And once you're able to identify when you're being mistreated, or when you're, let me even back it up a little bit further, when you're being treated in a way that's not okay with you, then you can start taking appropriate action. So it doesn't even, like I said, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter if they even meant to or not. It could have been the most well-intended person out there who makes some sort of comment that just does not sit well with you. And you're like, wow, I am not okay with that. Let's say, for example, you have a coworker and you guys are all going out to lunch. And so you decide to carpool, and I don't know, you hop in he offers to drive and you hop in his car, and he starts asking you questions about like your personal life, and it just starts making you uncomfortable. Doesn't matter if he meant to make you uncomfortable. Doesn't matter if he's really flirting with you or trying to hit on you. It doesn't matter what his intentions are. If it makes you uncomfortable, then it makes you uncomfortable. And so then, just knowing that, like, that you don't have to figure him out, then you can just say, oh, you know what? Then you can respond to it. So it's about getting your boundaries back into place. So then you can say something like, you know what? I really would rather not talk about my relationship, or I'd really rather not, however you want to say that, however you kind of want to hold the line. And it's the same thing with anybody else. So let's say, for example, you do have a person that's, snarky, or you have a neighbor who's asking you things that they're asking too much. They want to borrow stuff. They want you to watch their dog. They want you to do all this stuff for them. Again, you don't need to figure out, is this a problem or not? It's where are your limits? So like, once we know our limits and like what we're okay with and what we're not okay with, that'll set you free, because then you don't have to figure out what their intentions are. Do they mean to mistreat me? Do they mean to be mean? Do they mean to be hateful? Is this hateful? I don't know. Is it that? Is it this? Doesn't matter. So does that make sense? Does that help? Zach Says Dana, I highly suspect my ex was a narcissist. She discarded me out of the blue on my 19th birthday for new supply. Your videos actually tipped me off to narcissistic personality disorder. Could you elaborate on big day discards? So, okay. So, and here's the thing too. So, narcissism itself is a behavior. It's a human trait. We all have it. It's to the degree and frequency when it becomes a problem. But that behavior, regardless of whether or not she's actually a full out narcissist or if she was just behaving in a very narcissistic way, either way, potato, potato, it's still a problem. So, narcissists in general that are like further down the spectrum, okay, they like to create as much emotional pain as possible because when they can get a reaction out of somebody, then it makes them feel significant. So the more pain they can inflict, the bigger the reaction, the more it's just sick. It's a sick way for them to build up their ego. So I came across a video the other day, and there was a commenter who summed it up so perfectly about narcissists and people with borderline personality disorder. She said, for all of those people out there with borderline personality disorder, watch out because you're the narcissist's favorite snack. And I thought, yes, that is the perfect way to put it. So narcissists, so we're talking like, kind of these two more like extreme personalities, but narcissists do tend to target like highly like volatile, highly reactive people like that, because they can get a reaction, and it's just all of that intensity that they love because it makes them feel good. So back to your situation. So your girlfriend, she upped and left you on your birthday. That's horrible. That's ridiculous. That's just so incredibly insensitive. But yeah, they will do this kind of stuff. It's common for birthdays, Christmas, births of children, deaths at funerals. If something major is going on, like you're just going to be applying to college, or it's like right before a significant event. It's like right before you're, I don't know if you're on a sports team and you guys have a big game, or you just found out that you were diagnosed with some major illness. They just tend to up and leave. And so they either up and leave because if it's negative stuff like funerals, major illnesses, stress in your own life, they up and leave because they just don't care and they don't want to be bothered with it. But if there's this pattern of like Christmases and birthdays and this kind of stuff, it tends to be that they need to be the center of attention. They will throw a fit, and it can be very predictable, and they just ruin the holiday for everybody. If they have children, they'll either not get them gifts, or they'll promise a gift and then get them something different. It's just all of these games all the time. Yeah, Kim says holidays are the worst with a narcissist. Yeah, they are. It's just all about them all the time. And Rob says, ew, a favorite snack. Yep. And I would say that even goes for people that don't have borderline personality, but that are just traumatized and they're very reactive. So if you're getting the vibe like, hey, this person seems to really do this a lot. I've tried being assertive with them and let them know like, hey, that's not okay with me. I don't like silent treatment, or if you've got an issue, we need to talk about it, or what have you. But then they keep like doing these things, then you know that it's intentional and that they're kind of messing with you. And if they seem to enjoy provoking a reaction in you, that's time to just steer clear. Like there is no working that. There really isn't. You're dealing with somebody that's so just dysfunctional. It's not, just save your time and money, drive on. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Emily says, I do this all the time. I try to read into everything and figure out their intentions. Yeah, I think that's most people after you've gone through something traumatic, especially if you've been through emotional or psychological abuse, it's very common for a person to doubt their perceptions and to struggle with being grounded in their reality because you feel emotionally blown apart. You're like, you know what? I don't know. I don't know who to trust. I don't know how to trust. I don't know what's safe and what's unsafe. And you're confused. You're confused by what other people's intentions are. And again, this is totally normal given what we've all gone through. So if you've come across somebody who's really, especially if they were very seemingly not abusive, if they were incredibly nice and charming and kind and compassionate, and then everything takes a turn and you just end up getting dragged through hell, then it's very confusing because you're trying to figure out, well, if this person who I thought was Prince or Princess Charming can treat me like this, well, then how do I know other people are safe? That's where all of this kind of stuff comes from, because our brains their number one job is to keep us safe. And in order to do that, they are meaning-making machines. And so it's sort of like, there's benefit. And we know when you're a child, you touch a hot stove, you get burned. You learn, okay, don't do that. You also learn, don't grab a dog by its tail. And, there's a whole bunch of hard lessons. Most of us, I think, you learn the hard way as a little kid. At a certain age, I think we all tend to kind of think we've got the world figured out, that we're safe enough, that we know how to navigate our way. We know, and we're wrong. Most people are wrong. And that's what's so unfortunate, because this stuff isn't talked about. And even if it were to be talked about, because we all think that we'd be able to see a problematic person coming, we tend to think like, oh yeah, I'll be fine. And then we're not, especially if we get tangled up with somebody who comes across like Prince or Princess Charming. And then it's very confusing and kind of back to the drawing board of, okay, well, I didn't see them coming. So what did I miss? What pieces did I miss? And that's where a lot of this like rehashing is coming from, and this confusion and this need, all of these different defenses that are trying to keep us safe. So yeah. Okay, let's see here. People are talking about the book, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents by Lindsay Gibson. Yes, that is our book club book. And I am only on, this is my book. This is how marked up. I don't think in my entire life have marked up a book as much as I have this one flagged. This is page 78 is where I'm at. And I should also add that I already typed out all of my notes for chapter 1. And so I took off all the flags. So this is like missing probably a good 30 flags. So it's a great book. It's just a really, really, really fantastic book. And I hope that you guys get a chance to read it. It's a relatively short book. It's engaging. They just really did a great job with this book. It's 196 pages altogether. And like I said, pretty quick read. Okay, let's see something. Jack says, Dana, the other day, my narcissistic mom was talking to my sister, who no contacted me after 20 years, but still gossips. When I was over, instead of saying, hey, your brother is here to help, she called me free slave labor. Well, I guess if your mom is narcissistic, then, and if she says stuff that kind of just gets under your skin like that, and it isn't very, isn't very nice, then yeah, that sounds par for the course. And see, let me just take some time right now to talk about context, because to an outsider who this kind of stuff can just seem like, oh, you're just being too sensitive. That's not really that big of a deal. I joke like that all the time, blah, blah. That may be the case, but what matters is that you weren't okay with that kind of a comment that she made, and you were there for context. So I might joke with my brother in a similar way. And I do joke with my brother. We joke with each other in similar ways. But the difference in that situation with me and my brother and with you and your mom is my brother and I, that's how we joke. And the context is well intended. If at any time I were to cross a line by accident and say something that wasn't funny, or that he found to be not funny, or that he found offensive, I would never do it again. So the context and the intention is very different. And this is something that can trip a lot of people up if they have narcissistic or abusive people in their life, was when they point out situations like this to another person, it can seem like, oh, that's no big deal, or, what have you. But it's different when it's directed at you and you're in the room and you don't find it funny and you have this whole history with the person. So yeah. And if it bothers you, it bothers you. That's what it is at the end of the day. Let's see here. Let me scroll up here and look for some more questions. Mo asks, hey, how does one live with a narcissist? I live with my mom, and she constantly provokes me to get a narcissistic injury and act out in anger. I'm trying to be no vocal contact with her. Well, I think doing what you're doing. So much of this stuff is awareness. It's awareness and acceptance. And I don't mean acceptance in terms of it's no big deal. I mean acceptance in this is her behavior and this is how she is. So it sounds like you've got that. You're like, hey, I see this stuff clearly. I live with my mom. She constantly provokes me. When I react, then she uses that as an excuse to lash out in anger at me. So it sounds like you're very clear on what's going on. Now the next step, so you have awareness, you have acceptance. This is what it is, and this is what it is, right? Then the next step is anticipation. So trying your very best to not let this stuff catch you off guard and to detach emotionally from it. So yeah, okay, yeah, this is your mom. This is what she does. This is the pattern. And so all you can do is realize this and not engage. So not taking it personally, realizing, okay, I just need to go get some space, either getting up, excusing yourself and going to the bathroom, going to bed early, going for a walk, getting in your car, going for a drive, doing whatever you can to break that pattern of her pushing you until you explode, so then she can explode at you. So, and that's going to take some practice, because it is really difficult for any one of us to disengage when that's going on, when we're on the receiving end of it. And a lot of it is when we're being attacked, we go into fight or flight mode. This is just, it's a human thing. We all do. And when that happens, there's the logic and critical thinking part of your brain goes offline, like your brain downshifts. And so it's the baser instincts of your brain that take over. The only way to even have a chance at that not happening is through practice. practice, 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 practice. And it's going to also be this kind of post game analysis, where after the event, taking some time and with that lens of compassion and curiosity, and not judgment, but compassion and curiosity, looking at your behavior, thinking about, okay, what happened here? What did she say? What did I say? What went right? And what could I have done different? And then next time, try to do those things differently. So for example, this is not a related example, but it's the same kind of behavior. I just want to illustrate the point that this can work. Okay. So when I was in nursing school, one of the classes that we had was advanced cardiac life support, and you have it for children and you have it for adults, and it's not like regular CPR. So what I found so fascinating about that class was we had to train, and we would run different scenarios. And the thing I really liked about that class is we would also practice taking action under pressure. So it's one thing to do CPR on somebody in a class. What's one thing to do CPR on like a dummy in a classroom, right? Where there's nothing at stake. It's a whole other thing when you've got a crowd around you that's videoing you and you have a hysterical person screaming at you. And there's all of this pressure to not make any mistakes. And so we used to practice like that. And I just loved that. And then working in like the hospitals and getting to meet, crash cart teams. And this is what they would do. They would constantly run these drills, and they had different roles. And so when crisis happened, they snapped into action. So they were able to override that part of their brain, because when crisis happens, if we don't practice like that, we all panic. And everybody panics in a different way. Some people start screaming, some people start crying, some people just stand there frozen, some people, they run away. Very few people know how to handle a situation appropriately in a time of crisis. And those that do tend to know how to handle it appropriately are the ones that have been training for that situation. Firefighters do it, EMTs do it, and we can do it. So if you're dealing with a trauma-inducing person like this, I would just treat it as a drill. And again, the kind of the whole post-game analysis thing, it's what these teams do too. Firefighters, EMTs, crash cart type people. There is no judgment there. They have that mindset of, I'm here to learn. So it's analyzing, okay, what went right? What didn't? What can we learn from this? What can we do better next time? And it's truly keeping that mindset, because we can all be so critical of ourselves and definitely of other people, but of ourselves. And when we are, no growth can come from shame. So shame just puts up walls and it just shuts down. Then we're stuck in trying to run from our reality, and we're avoiding things. We might start drinking, we might start eating, we might go take a nap. We can't handle the reality because we feel so bad about ourselves. So the way around that shame and to start practicing this stuff and to keep practicing it is to get comfortable with that reality. And the way to get comfortable with that reality is to bring with you that attitude of curiosity and compassion, and just that motivation to always be learning about why are you doing what you're doing? Like, what happened? That's it. So keep us posted. I'll be curious. And two, sometimes, let me just add this too. Sometimes you can practice, and your skills can only go so far. So one of my favorite things is if you find yourself, you're like, man, this is the 20th time I've tried doing this. And man, she got me again. She really I fell for it. She dropped the hook and I just gobbled it up. I cannot believe, like, oh, why did I do this? if you keep finding that, like you just keep falling into it, you keep getting baited in, then instead of coming up with this whole complex response to it, then try to just be like, okay, the one thing that you have to do is just get some distance. Go to the bathroom, go for a walk, go upstairs, go take a nap, get out of the house, do something, but get some space. That's it. That's all you've got to do in that moment. So sometimes chunking it down to like that one thing can help. Okay, so let's see here. Jennifer says, at my work, if there is an injury or someone passing out, we have to page a code 3 times in a row. Recently, a customer passed out and my supervisor was paging the code 3 times. Meanwhile, a crowd was forming and another customer was yelling at her to do more than page. But based on our protocol, she was doing what had to be done. Plus, she's not CPR trained, only our higher ups are. So yeah, it can be hard under pressure. Oh, it absolutely is. It's chaos. And even if like how we think we would handle something and how we actually do tend to be 2 very different things. And this, because that logic and critical thinking part of our brain goes offline, there's people that have studied this, they change how they do things. So for example, the code here in the United States is the emergency code is 911. Well, when it first came out, it was 911. They would say, need help, 911. And what they found was people were dying because they were looking for the 11 button on their phone. And of course, phones go up to what, 9, I believe? Yeah, I guess it would be 9. So you're panicking, you're not thinking straight. It's wild. So different things too. Like where I used to work, we had a whole system very similar to yours. Like if something happened, they would say, okay, like they would page 200, they'd page 300, they'd page 400. And we would run these drills. And I don't remember what any of the pages were. Nobody did. That was the kicker. Nobody remembered. And we were dealing with some major stuff on a very regular basis. So this was one of my biggest pet peeves about that place, is because I kept saying this, like, you guys, when people panic, when you say paging 300, nobody knows what that means, and it's not going to go down well. People panic. People are going to start calling 911. They're going to take action into their own hands. It's going to be chaos. Whereas like hospitals, for example, they'll have certain names. So a lot of hospitals, if there's security needed, they'll say paging Dr. Armstrong. So like Armstrong is the code for, hey, we need this person to be restrained. We need security. We need help. People know, and that makes logical sense, right? You hear that and you can realize what they're asking for. But when it's something obscure like paging 200 or, you've got to do something 3 times in a row, chaos tends to break out. Even for me, when we had this house fire, I was so shocked at how poorly I handled it across the board, because I've been a first responder. I've dealt with crisis my whole life with everything that I've done. So I was very surprised as to how hysterical I was and how I was not thinking straight. And this is where the self-compassion and grace comes into play, because all any of us can do is the best we can do at the time. But I think it's just kind of interesting to know these things, because people do tend to end up overcomplicating safety plans like this. And when a person's in crisis, sometimes it's just, actually even CPR. CPR used to be, 15 compressions and 2 breaths for an adult. Like you check, what was it? Like you check the airway, you do an airway sweep if there's something in there, then you check the pulse, and then you do this and you do breaths. And then if, there was this whole process for it. And that was for, community CPR. And then they found that with that, even if people were CPR certified, they were very hesitant to hop in to help. because there was so much to it. And if you're a community member, you're not doing CPR. Hopefully you're never having to do CPR, but you never practice it. And stuff doesn't go down in real life like it does in the classroom. So people just stand there and they freeze. And so the Red Cross recently changed CPR, community CPR, to where it's just compressions only. That's it. Like there's no breathing, there's no checking the airway, it's just compressions, because it's that one thing, like we just need a person to take the bare minimum action, and that's that bare minimum action. So, and it's interesting how all this stuff kind of comes together. Let's see here. That's a great question, Zach. He says, what would you say are the greatest differences between a narcissistic discard and an ordinary breakup? The lack of concern, the level of cruelty and callousness. With an ordinary breakup, it's painful. Some hurtful words might be said. There might be, other hurtful things going on. People might even be cheating. There might be some of that stuff going on, but with a narcissistic breakup, there's a lack of empathy and remorse. So in a normal breakup, even if the people are cheating, even if there's like some really problematic stuff going on, there's still that level of empathy and like, oh my God, I cannot believe it. I can't believe we're here. I am so sorry to hurt you. There's that acknowledgement, there's that empathy. So that's missing with a narcissist. And there tends to be this jaw-dropping lack of empathy and lack of remorse. And instead you get this cruel, cold indifference of, well, it's just out of like, well, yeah, I cheated. I mean, can you blame me? Or there's no accountability. They're blaming you for everything. Or it's just so incredibly painful. There's no warmth, there's no caring, there's no concern about that other person whatsoever. It's just this really harsh level of self-absorption on their end. So yeah, and then Nikki says, yeah, and the narcs will blame you for them cheating. Well, that too. So then you get even some projection and some other craziness where they start accusing you. That, I can't stress this enough. If you're getting to this place where you're being accused of doing things, you've really got to be careful, because you're not dealing with a person who is in reality. And so in their mind, because they've done these mental gymnastics, all of their responses to you are going to be in what they're thinking as self-protection. So you did me wrong. That's why I lashed out at you. You cheated on me. That's why I, am following you, or I'm stalking you, or it's crazy. Lots of people are like, man, my ex cheated on me nonstop. I finally divorced him. Now I'm getting all of these awful, ugly texts and emails and posts on Facebook talking about how I'm a cheater and I'm horrible and I'm a narcissist and I'm a whore and all of these things. And I didn't cheat. Like I did nothing. And it's wild for that when that kind of stuff happens. So a relationship with a narcissist, it tends to be so profoundly insensitive and hurtful. It's way beyond a normal breakup. Like normal breakups, there's often sadness there, there's hurt, there's kind of this reflection of what what you had, a lot of the good times. And there tends to be this mutuality. There's still that care and concern about that person. There isn't this desire to destroy them or to just throw them away like they're nothing. Okay, people are talking about Michael Jackson movie, the Leaving Neverland, and then the R. Kelly thing. We'll talk about that here in a second. That's a good question. Camilla says, can somebody be emotionally immature with no empathy and not be a narcissist? Here's my take on it. So in order for a person to if we're talking narcissist in the terms of like narcissistic personality disorder, they might not, just the way that personality disorder is understood, they might not technically qualify for all of that, but I would, they're probably walking that line. At a minimum, I think a person can be considered a narcissist without having like full-blown narcissistic personality disorder. And I think the reason for that is the English language, there's just not enough words in the English language to really, I think, accurately describe the spectrum. So I think that's why there's a lot of this kind of fumbling around for trying to define these terms and to understand them. But yeah, emotional immaturity plus lack of empathy, I would say plus lack of remorse, you're getting really close there. And that's a good point too. And Agatha says, yeah, and you don't need to have NPD to have emotional immaturity. Yes. And Jennifer says, and it could be that they're antisocial personality disorder. Yes. I would say that's kind of like the next level up. Like you have, and again, if you think about it in terms of like a continuum, I like to view it as a continuum of self-orientation. So if you kind of think of a number line, and on one side you have, or in the middle you have 0, and then it goes +1, +2, all the way to like +10. And then on the other side, to the right of the 0, you have 0, then you have -1 all the way to -10. If you were to say the +1 to +10 side, that level of self-orientation is towards a person's self. So it starts off like, okay, there's like a healthy degree of that, healthy narcissism, which is, yeah, I'm a priority, right? Like, yeah, why not me? Why not now? Like I can do this, right? But it's also within that healthy degree of narcissism, it's still this, why not me? But hey, why not you? There's enough to go around. I don't need to knock you down to make me feel good, right? Like we can both get our needs met. It doesn't have to be this kind of Highlander mentality where like there can be only one, right? Like we can both do our thing. Then you kind of get further down that spectrum, maybe like around the +3, +4, +5. That tends to be the more of like problematic narcissism, where then it becomes, instead of a, hey, why not me? Why not now? Then it becomes, it's more of it's me at the expense of you. I need to get my needs met. I don't care if you get your needs met at all. That's incredibly painful. It's, there's no reciprocity. There's no mutuality in a relationship like that. Then you have more of like the sociopathic end where it becomes, me. So narcissistic is like me at the expense of you. Then you have me at the destruction of you. So it's that exploitative behavior. It's all about me, but now I'm going to drain your account. I'm going to steal your car. I'm just going to take and take and take. Then at the farthest end of that spectrum is you have me at the death of you. So that becomes that really extreme behavior where it's, in order for me to feel good about myself, I need to completely destroy another person, possibly to the point where I'm killing them. That's how I see this continuum. On the other side of that, so you have the -1 to -10 of self-orientation. Then you have people that are others-oriented. So instead of being self-oriented, like the +1 to +10, others-oriented, -1 to -10. This very quickly can become a problem. So there's a time and place for it to be, hey, you know what? Why not you? Like, yeah, I can put your needs first. Oh, you're sick. You have a broken leg. You need some help moving. Yeah, I don't really want to help anybody. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really want to help you move. I don't really want to have to go out and take the dog out to go to the bathroom every single time, but I will, because why not you? Because there's that mutuality there. Because I want to help you, because I care about you, because I realize you don't feel well or that you have a broken leg, and, you know, but very quickly it can start becoming a problem, because then it's all about you at the expense of me. So it's flipped. It's the exact opposite of the self-orientation. It's others orientation. So it's all about you at the expense of me. Oh, you need help. You need me to do all these things. I'll continue to be there. Oh, sure. I can be late for work. Oh, I can loan you money I don't have. Oh, I'll be there. You know, I'll keep giving and giving and giving. And then it's the you at the destruction of me. Oh, I can mortgage my house and help you out with that. I can do all these things. And then you're destroying your own life trying to help somebody else. And then at the extreme end, it's all about you at the death of me. And that's really that extreme, I guess what you would normally consider like extreme codependent kind of behavior. But it's important. If you've heard me talk about this before, you know, it's so important that we get into alignment with ourselves, or people are operating at that place of kind of that range of like minus 2 to like a +2, +3, kind of this range of a healthy give and take. It can be about you and it can be about me. Like, I'm making myself a priority. I know that I matter, but because I know that I matter, I'm able to have boundaries and I'm able to be there for you in a way that's comfortable for me, to where there's not resentment building up, that I'm not giving more time or energy or money than I can. Like, I want to help, but within limits. Because to that extreme, when it goes down to like that -7, -8, it kills people. It drives them to suicide. These are the murder-suicide relationships. These are the falling in love with somebody, and it just completely destroys you. So, okay. Camilla, thank you for the live stream donation. It says, I went on a date, and the second date after meeting him, he started love bombing me in texts. He also ignored boundaries. Thank you for improving my life. You are so very welcome. And it sounds like you are the one that are improving your life. So that's a huge victory. Yay, you. And I like how you added that he ignored your boundaries, because that's the big piece there. A lot of people will get hung up on, well, how do we know what is the difference between, you know, like an abuser doing love bombing and a normal person who's just really, really excited and they're showing a lot of attention and affection. Like, what's the difference? And it's important that we see love bombing. When anybody's coming on strong right out of the gate, it's a problem. And that is immature behavior. And they're not in love with us. They're in love with the fantasy that they've created of us. And it's the same way if we're feeling that way about them, to kind of realize, you know what, I don't know them. I don't know them well enough to it's the fantasy. And so I've got to pull this back and take things slow and really make sure that they are who I think they are, you know? But the added part of that is, okay, then when you do try setting boundaries with somebody and say, hey, you know what, I think we're moving a little bit too fast, or I'm really not okay with these different pet names that you're calling me, or I'm just not comfortable with certain, you know, whatever it might be. I don't really want to spend, I'm not trying to have sex with you right away. I don't really want to have sexy texts with you. It's not appropriate. And they just keep justifying their behavior. Well, you know, that's just how I am. And I'm just sorry. I'm just a real passionate person. And I just can't help it. You're just so amazing that I just, you make me feel like a teenager, right? Like, they're just telling you, they're justifying it, but they're not listening. And that's a problem. So, and lots of people, it's that emotional immaturity. You know, a lot of people can fall into this. We probably have fallen into this too. But knowing what we know now, like now that you're kind of healthier and more well-adjusted, and you realize, hey, this is where my boundaries are, then it makes it that much easier to just see like, this is not going to work. And I can't keep like, I don't have the energy to try to train or teach somebody this kind of stuff. Like, I'm just going to drive on. Okay. Okay, let's see here. Okay, people, have you guys seen Leaving Neverland? I see some people talking about it here in the chat. I just watched it. It's a 4-hour documentary thing on HBO. I watched it the other day and it was very, very interesting. I have not seen the R. Kelly one yet. That's on my list of things to do. I can only imagine. I've seen bits and pieces of R. Kelly stuff over the years, and that man is he just needs to be in jail. It's just disgusting. So what did you guys think? Camilla says, I watched part of Leaving Neverland, but had to turn it off. Yeah, it was a lot more graphic than I was expecting it to be. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, Camilla says the R. Kelly one is awful because he abused so many women. Yeah, I'm sure. I can only like handle these kind of things. I swear it takes all I have to not just go like vigilante. Just if I ever to stop caring, it's here on record. That's what I'm going to go do. This kind of stuff just makes me so angry and so sick and just disgusted that it continues and it doesn't get addressed. It's frustrating. People are talking about leaving. Here's the thing with Leaving Neverland. I went into it trying to be as neutral as possible. I definitely had my reservations because I'm like, well, why are they coming forward now? Why didn't they come forward when Michael was still alive? And it's, it just seems very kind of money driven. And so that was kind of in the back of my mind. But when they were telling their stories, I will say that it felt like everything made sense. And when you see his behavior, like through that lens of the grooming that went on, and then they had a lot of, corroborating evidence. Like they had this one boy, Michael Jackson had bought him a fax machine and he would send letters to him, like mini letters every single day. And he had pet names with him and stuff that's not appropriate. Like it was so over the top, kind of inappropriate. What I thought was the most interesting, even if people want to say like, okay, well, I think they're lying or what have you. I still think that there's a lot of takeaways a person can get from this documentary, especially if you're a parent. And there were many things, but the way that the parents described their relationship with him, I thought was so spot on. He didn't just groom the children, he groomed the parents. And again, it really doesn't matter if you think Michael did it or didn't do it. This is exactly how predators work. We had a scandal here in Michigan not too long ago. A gymnastics coach at the local university had sexually molested hundreds of female students over the years, hundreds. And he had groomed them, and he'd groomed their parents. And that's how a lot of these people are. They fly under the radar. They befriend the family. You see this. It's coaches that are overly involved with boys or girls. You see this with the Catholic priests when there was that whole scandal going on. So they can come across like they're caring, they're concerned. They take this special interest in a certain child. They make that. In Oprah, I don't know if you guys saw her interview about it, but she was so spot on. And she talked about, most people. So I apologize. I should probably we're only going to talk about this for a few more minutes and then I'll switch topics. So if you want to just mute it for a little bit, just kind of trigger warning. I should have said that a little while ago, but I apologize. But so she talks about it and she said, when people think about child abuse, they don't understand why especially if the child is older, like why wouldn't they tell on them? Why would they allow this to continue? And she said it's because that it's not sexual. Most people that are abused, children or adults, don't think of it as abuse at the time, because it's so insidious. It's such a slow, gradual process. And with children, there's an added grooming, and they don't know. They're young. And so it's not just sexual abuse. It's Oprah had said, she's like, it's a seduction. So you think that you're in this relationship with this person, that you have this secret, that you're special and unique. And there's all of this shame and confusion surrounding it. And that's how these predators get to these kids and then drag them off into the bushes. And it's the same thing with the parents, because they start grooming the parents, and the parents then, again, normal, decent people tend to not even, this is not even on their radar. And the parents are like, it's just the soccer coach. They can't be a bad person. And one of the moms in the video too, she had said that she felt so bad because she always thought that she would know, that if something was going on with one of her children, that she would just know. And she said she didn't. And, hindsight is always, we always see things more clearly with hindsight. And so she just felt so terrible about not seeing it, and how crazy things got, and for the longest time, I kept thinking, like, how on earth what is wrong with these parents? Like, how could you let your child stay the night at a strange man's house? And he doesn't have kids. Like, it's never made any sense to me. But then watching this documentary, it's like, oh, wow, I get it. Because he was grooming the parents, and he was going on about, I never had a childhood, and I would just never hurt children. And he was so childlike, and they would watch cartoons and eat popcorn and call each other silly little names and all of this stuff. And so the moms were like, we just thought of him as another kid. And it took them quite a while to get to that place where they would let their child stay over with Michael. But again, it's that slow process where the mom would say, at first we would go on tour with him, and he was calling every night, and they would talk on the phone for hours, and he was sending letters. And she said it was like they were best friends. It was just like having another child. And he would stay at their house. I didn't realize how close the families were to him. And then it began making sense. And so then their defenses went down. And she said it was always kind of a little odd, but then they'd always kind of gloss over these things like, well, I guess he never had a childhood, or he seems innocent. And boy, our son just absolutely thinks the world of him, and how cool is this? And not to mention Michael Jackson, here is this super famous #1 celebrity in the world who, and both of the kids and their parents had said this, they're like, and he is interested in you, and how special and unique and different and chosen that you feel. So I don't know. It was a very interesting documentary. And like I said, even if regardless of whether you think it happened or not, I think parents can really learn a lot about different grooming techniques and how this stuff goes down. And um, you know, awareness is half the battle. Okay, let's see. Galactic MC says Nick Cannon said that R. Kelly was illiterate and that was why he was attracted to young girls. I I think with R. Kelly, it's seriously all about control. I remember reading something about him years ago, like 10 years ago, where he would have his like bodyguards and stuff at his different concerts basically go scout out, and he supposedly liked kind of the most unattractive women, young girls. They weren't women, they were girls. So 13, 14, 15, not attractive. His bodyguards would come up to them and say, "Hey, R. Kelly wants to see, meet you backstage." It's the same thing. So then these girls, of course, I mean, any person at the concert would have felt like, "Oh my gosh, R. Kelly wants to see me. Oh my gosh," like you would be so flattered by that, right? So, but these girls especially. And so then after the show, he had this whole thing where he would urinate on them. And so he was very much into like that degradation and humiliation. And so there were people talking about this years ago of this guy was into some really disturbing stuff with young girls. And, he married Aaliyah when she was 15. It just goes on and on. Nikki is talking about Michael Jackson and not abusing Corey Feldman or Macaulay Culkin because they were in the spotlight. Yeah, there was talk about that in the documentary, because people were like, well, the boys, Wade, and I forget the other boy's name. Part of it was that they were so hurt. So Michael Jackson had been this huge part of their life for, a handful of years, and a daily part of their life. And then all of a sudden things would just kind of fizzle out, and they were so hurt, like they were just dropped, like they were nothing. And then they realized, they'd see him on the news and stuff, and he'd found another little boy. And so Wade had basically been replaced by Macaulay Culkin. And he said he was just so hurt by that. Which, again, you can understand why, because Michael had created this very, sick, twisted relationship with Wade, and Wade was still a kid. And I mean, it was just a very, very confusing thing. And then to be treated like that is just to add insult to injury. So, but I think also it's important to realize too, that there's child predators in general, they have targets. And so they don't treat every single person the same way for a wide variety of reasons. So there is a good chance that nothing ever happened to Corey Feldman or Macaulay Culkin. But there's also a chance that something did happen and that they just don't want to talk about it. And I can imagine how, I think for especially men, that there's kind of that added taboo because it's a homosexual relationship. And also the whole world knows it's with Michael Jackson. And it's one of those things, like, you can't, once you say that, you can't unsay it. Like, those words are out there. So I could see how just the weight of that secret and like what that could potentially mean would be a lot. So a lot for a person to come to terms with. Okay, let's see here. Jennifer asks about sociopaths. She says, when it comes to sociopaths, they want to harm you. Is that what their main goal is? I think with sociopaths, it's more of it's not, I think it's more that they're impulsive and it's all about them. And they may or may not intentionally try to hurt somebody. I don't, again, my 2 cents on it. I don't think sociopaths are intentionally like malicious. They're exploitative. They don't drain your bank account or do all of these things to necessarily ruin a person's life. They're not even thinking about you. It's just they want money. That's why they're doing it. It's that whole like it's me at the expense of you. It's me at the destruction of you. But it's not. There's not that level of like maliciousness there. That tends to be more on like the psychopathic spectrum where it's intentional. If you've ever, I mentioned this before, but there's a documentary out there called Tickle that I think really does a great job of like illustrating that kind of predatory, intentional, malicious behavior. To me, when I think of psychopathic behavior, it's that. They're playing the long game. Sociopaths tend to play the short game. It's impulsive. It's what they want. It's exploitative. If the short game turns into the long game, then so be it. But psychopaths, they're predatory. They have the ability to like plan things out. It's malicious. It's intentional. There's thought there. And it's really oftentimes just to destroy a person because they can. There may or may not be any there might not be any other motivation other than just for fun or because they're bored or just to see if they can get away with it. This is when you get people like serial killers that kill people that they don't know, that they'll just go out and kidnap somebody and kill them. They might plan something out for years before they actually, go to kill somebody, like that kind of stuff. It's ego gratification, but there's no other, gain that comes from it. Jennifer says, yeah, my boyfriend told me the movie Tickle and about it. Said it was super creepy. It is super creepy, and it's a true story. But again, a lot of this kind of stuff, I feel like it's just good for people to be aware of because there are people like this out there. Like this is real. This isn't just some, fictionalized thing. Let's see here. Oh, Frankendahl says, I'm in the film industry and I've worked with Corey Feldman and he's so narcissistic. Yeah, he's a weird dude. There's quite a few, videos and stuff on him on YouTube, and it's very strange behavior. I would agree. It's like he's stuck in this, I guess, kind of in his mind, like the peak of his career. It's just very strange. I don't know what's going on with him, but yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he's a strange guy in person. Okay, let's see. That's what I was thinking too. Wonder Woman said, well, Corey told about other men abusing him. He would say if it happened. That was exactly what I had said when I first started. I'm like, well, I think he would, but people have different reasons for doing different things, and you just, I don't know. You never know. And maybe nothing did happen with him because he was popular and, because of all that. It's sort of like, for example, like the BTK killer. Okay. He was a serial killer. I forget how many people, mainly women and children, he killed, but to his wife and his daughter, he was fine. So sometimes predators have targets, and sometimes it doesn't make any sense as to why they choose some people over others. Okay, let's see here. Agatha says, this is a question for everyone here. Why do people have such a hard time validating us as both a victim and a survivor? Why we need to either claim our victory fully or never mention the abuse? Well, I think other people have a hard time validating us because they don't understand it. They don't understand the dynamics. They don't understand why we stayed. They don't understand how it could have happened. They don't understand how a person that seems like a normal, decent person can behave that way. So then they think, well, it's got to be you're too sensitive. You're making what did you do to provoke them? Kind of thing. They just don't see that side of them, so they don't understand. So I think that's part of it. Because again, I think human beings, I think we're just hardwired to think that maybe it's a form of denial, that we all just think that we would see danger when it's coming, and we're wrong. 9 out of 10 times we're wrong. Just like we all think that we would handle problematic situations in a certain way, and unless we've trained extensively for it, 9 out of 10 times we were wrong. So, but like you're saying about the validation time or getting validation from others, I think understanding that other people don't understand, and that it's not about you, that their lack of understanding has nothing to do with you. It's just that they don't get it because they haven't lived it. And then we have to really release that need from other people to validate us. I think that's a big part in healing, is just to realize other people have limitations. They just, it's anybody. It's anybody that hasn't experienced something, has a hard time understanding it. Just like anybody, who's going through cancer, or who's had a miscarriage, or who's trying to adopt a child, or who's going through, anything that would make anybody different from people that they're around, it's going to be its own kind of lonely path, and they're going to seek out other people who get them. So I think it's just understanding that it's, we can't force a person to understand something that they haven't ever been through and that they don't want to understand. So, and again, I think there's kind of a place in healing where we release a lot of that need. A lot of people, I think it's common when a person is out of an abusive relationship, they want to shout, they want to talk about it. They want to shout it from the rooftops. They want validation. They want other people to know. And they put stuff on their Facebook page. They're very open about details and names and things that have happened. And they just want other people to know and to validate them and to understand, like, this is what really happened. I get it. I was there too. I struggled with this for probably a good 5 or 6 years after my situation. And at the time, it didn't feel like I was oversharing. It felt like I was bringing awareness to the truth. But to other people that haven't lived it, to them, they were like, why? This is not the time and place for this. Like, you're oversharing. It's too much and we don't want to hear it. But then, to a person who needs to be validated, like, that just fuels the fire even more. So I think a lot of it's just fully realizing, like, who can truly validate you and who can't, and to just kind of drive on. And I think the reason that why we either need to claim our victory fully or never mention it is I think most people need that validation of, I think validation is a very important part of healing. I think that's why it's what makes these support groups and these live streams and therapy in general so powerful. I was talking to somebody the other day about this with, I think it was in that crisis class. And we were talking about the power of validation. And it's so true. It's one of the first, interestingly enough, so one of the first ways to get a person out of fight or flight mode is to start by validating them. Isn't that interesting? So if a person's coming at you and they're telling you everything that's going on with them, I'm so upset, you don't know, you don't understand, this isn't right, this isn't fair. What we tend to do, most of us on default, is we try to, when a person's coming at us like that, we experience anxiety. And we may kind of do one of two things. We might either just be like, oh, I'm getting out of here, and we run away, or we try to make them feel better. But when we do that, and it can be well-intended, it's not helping any, it's invalidating them. So, and it just adds fuel to the fire. So instead of just being like, oh, well, look on the bright side, and well, things could be worse, and you've got so much going for you, and all of this kind of stuff, arguing with them about their feelings, basically, to just hold that space for them and to just agree, just validating them. Yeah, I can see how that would be really hurtful and really angering and really upsetting. That makes complete sense. I'd probably feel the exact same way. All of that just diffuses another person, and it helps to bring them into that moment where they get out of that fight or flight mode. Validation's powerful. It really, really is. And when a person doesn't have it, when all they have is the opposite, it's just this constant re-victimization. And I think that's one of the reasons we continue to fight for it so much, because it's, you want to be heard. You just want somebody to say, yes, that's not right. It's not fair. This shouldn't have happened. I'm sorry this happened. This is outrageous and it's inappropriate, and to get that. Okay, this is an interesting question. Wonder Woman, I'll be curious to see what other people say about this. I honestly don't know. Her question is, does PTSD from narcissistic abuse cause phobias? She has an issue with mice. She said, I used to have mice 20 years ago and no phobia, but she found a mouse in her house the other day and found some mouse poop, and now has this phobia that she never had before, and now she's panicking. I don't know. My guess would be is if it is somehow related, maybe perhaps it has something to do with a lack of control, that there's mice in your house that aren't pets, that are somehow found their way in, and they're just kind of running free range throughout your house. And maybe that's the lack of control part is what's freaking you out. I don't know. I'd be curious to know if what other people think. And also if you were to maybe keep a journal about it and just kind of write about this to see what comes out. Because it does seem like there is something deeper there. Okay, Along Cloud 9 asks, what if your friend keeps going back to a disrespectful and abusive relationship? That is a tough one. I think first and foremost, realizing what we have control over and what we don't. And you don't have control over what your friend does. And oftentimes with these kinds of relationships, what people do, well, I should say what any of us do when we're doing something that we know is a problem, we hide it. There's a level of shame there. So again, people do this with their drinking. They do this with toxic relationships. They do this if they have an eating disorder. People, when they do something that they are feeling judged about, they hide it. It's the same with toxic relationships or abusive relationships. And so mentioning to her or to him, hey, this is what's going on. This person's not good for you, this, that, and the other. Odds are what's going to happen is they're going to start shutting down more, and they're not going to start telling you what's going on. And then that's kind of best case scenario. The worst case scenario is that they can start really just distancing themselves from you altogether. So if you're wanting to kind of help with that, just really, and it can be so incredibly difficult because, you care about your friend and it's like you want them to see the light and you kind of want to shake some sense into them. But like I said, that does not work. It tends to cause the exact opposite thing. So really it helps to just hold space for them and to let them know, I don't judge you. I love you. I'm here for you. If you want, it helps if you just listen, because, and it's so difficult to do. Okay. It really can be. Because again, most of us, when we see somebody that we care about that's in having a problem, a lot of us tend to go into advice giving mode, unsolicited advice giving mode. And 9 times out of 10, that's not wanted and it's not helpful. So asking your friend, how can I support you right now? How can I be there for you right now? And if they say, oh, I just want to listen, because what will tend to happen, because your friend is going to have a lot of this kind of mental anguish. It's the result of this cognitive dissonance of, I love him, I hate him. He's so awesome, but he's so mean to me. It's these two conflicting things. And your friend, male or female, is going to have to work this stuff out. And one of the ways people work it out is they talk about it. That's why it's so flip-floppy back and forth, and it's exhausting to listen to, and it makes no sense. And people tend to keep going back over and over again. The reason people go back over and over again, the vast majority of the time, is because they're able to continue to gloss over. They're like, okay, I really want to stay, but I really got to leave. I really want to stay, but I love him, but I hate him. And they're able to gloss over. They're able to not to deny what they're experiencing, and they're able to minimize it to where they're continuing to hold on to the good times and minimize the bad. And every time a person goes back, it gets worse and worse. And then there finally comes a point where it gets so bad that they can't justify it. Something happens that it crosses that line. They've cheated, or they've cheated for the 10th time, or they hit them, or they hit their child, or they hit their dog. Something happens that we're like, okay, I'm done. Like, this is the line. So being there as you're watching your friend go through all of this is incredibly difficult, but that's all any of us can do. If it's a really, really scary, dangerous situation, another way, I actually heard this from a true crime video, and I absolutely loved this. I'd never heard this before, but I loved this. There was a woman who was in an abusive relationship, and her dad and she had 2 children with the guy, and her dad was terrified that he was going to kill her. And she kept going back. And so her dad had said, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a bank account for you. So he opened it in his name. He put her name on it, and it had, I don't know, however, like a couple $1,000s to get away, her and the kids to get away. And he had said, this is the bank it's at, and it's no questions asked. Like, if you need to get out and you need to go, there's money here. And I thought that was such a great idea to help somebody that's not ready to leave, because the finance piece is what keeps people stuck for a long time, especially if they're married or they live together or there's children involved, this kind of thing. So I liked, I like that. I think that's something that a person could consider doing. But like I said, even just listening and being there and letting your friend know that there's no judgment can really help. It can help just be that sounding board so that your friend can kind of figure it out for themselves. And also too, when they're figuring it out for themselves, you might want to ask some questions like, well, have you thought about where the final straw is? Because sometimes a lot of people don't. So sometimes that can be a helpful question. Like, I'm not saying that you have to leave or that, you can put it back on them. You can say, you know what? You are smart. You are insightful. And you'll know when it's time to go. Letting them push back, push that back on them. And think about where your line in the sand is. Then you'll know when that's crossed. Because sometimes, like I said, just bringing that up can be like, oh, wow, I didn't realize the line had been pushed so far. Sometimes that can be clarifying. Let's see here. Kim says, I know I need to forgive my boyfriend's actions, but I wonder if I need to leave first and get some distance before forgiveness is possible. Well, that's a big statement. I guess, what are we talking about as far as, I guess, what do you mean by forgiveness? And yeah, I guess that's my question. What do you mean by forgiveness? Because set me straight. I want to give you my answer and then I'll kind of keep my eyes open for you to respond. But if we're talking forgiveness in the sense of you can come back into my life and things can go back to some degree of how they were, in order for that to happen, a person has to be sincerely accountable and they have to provide space for that healing to happen. They have to provide answers and they have to really work. They have to work to rebuild the trust. Not getting upset with you if you don't trust them, not trying to push you back into it, not getting defensive, none of that. So if you did something wrong, you got to fully own it, not fight with me, not say, well, but you know what, you did this, you did X, Y, and Z, or, oh, well, this other person did X, Y, and Z, or, oh, it wasn't that bad, or, oh, you did worse. None of that's being accountable. That's what shirking accountability looks like. Accountability is owning it. You know what? Yeah, I did X, Y, and Z. It wasn't right. I'm sorry it was so hurtful. It won't happen again. Owning it. And then saying, okay, I get that you're not going to trust me. I get that I need to rebuild this. This is how I plan to go about it. Then I would consider, okay, after that person's done the work of rebuilding trust, because again, talk is cheap. People say all kinds of things and they never follow through. If they actually start doing the work to rebuild the relationship, that's when I would consider, okay, maybe I can start considering opening my life back up to this person. But that's also assuming that's the things that they haven't done are like, that they're not like, we're not talking egregious behavior, like outrageous behavior. If it's way past deal breaker stuff, I would encourage you to hold to your deal breakers. If a person's treating you, if they're doing things that are really like undermining you behind your back, if they're doing relationship busting things behind your back, you would be wise to just go because they don't care. So if they're cheating, if they're stealing, if they're doing all this kind of stuff when you're not looking, they're upset they got caught is what it is. Because, that's my 2 cents on it. But if we're talking about forgiveness in the sense of releasing anger so that it's not destroying your life, I think that's a different thing completely. And that also is a process. It's not an event. It's an ongoing process. It takes quite a while. And that whole releasing anger part of it all, this is for you. You don't need them to acknowledge what they did was hurtful or wrong. You don't need them to apologize. You don't need them to try to make amends. You realize, I have got to do something with this anger so it doesn't consume me and destroy my life. And I'm going to work towards releasing this anger. It doesn't mean that you have to allow them back in your life, which I would highly recommend that you don't if they've never done the work to repair the trust and to earn that forgiveness. But that releasing anger, you can channel it in all different kinds of ways. You can journal about it. You work through it. You give yourself closure is what it is. Yeah. Kim says, yeah, exactly. To release the anger and the hatred. Yeah. It's a process. I see so many people, and I'm sure you guys have too, where the concept of forgiveness gets so twisted, and it's turned into this event and not a process. It's cheapened is what it is. It's turned into this event where people just say these words, like they say it's like magical words, like abracadabra, like, oh, I forgive you, and then everything is fine, and it's not. And to just be like, well, it's a way of bypassing the pain. When people say, well, I need to forgive this person that really did me wrong. And then it's like a, flip of a switch. They've now forgiven them. And then they think, well, I need to forgive and forget, and I need to have this person back into my life. And this kind of stuff, they're trying to take some shortcuts to feeling better, which again, I get it, but it doesn't work in the long run. And especially if you're keeping your life open to a person that's done some really hurtful things. So this is the time where it's good to have an idea of where are your deal breakers in this? Where are your standards? I'll tell you mine, just so you can have some context. My deal breakers used to be 10, 15 years ago, used to be if somebody cheated on me and then I had concrete proof that they cheated on me. And that's the thing. We're finding your line in the sand, because this stuff, we think we have deal breakers, but until you're put in that position, it can be a lot of gray area. So before it was like, well, I had to know for a fact they were cheating. But most of the time, unless somebody turns up pregnant, you don't have concrete proof that somebody's been cheating. Anyways, my old deal breakers were that somebody had to be cheating on me. They had to actually physically hit me. And again, in my mind, I think it had to have been a full out attack. It wouldn't have been anything I could have justified, basically, which just sounds so terrible to say, but that's what it was back then. Outside of that, I stayed in all kinds of really rotten friendships and relationships. The new me today has tightened that kind of stuff way up. So, if a person treats me with hostility, aggression, disdain, or contempt, I'm done. Like, they're showing that they don't even like you. I'm done. I've only seen one person act like that around me. And it was very clear at that point when I realized that it was okay to leave a friendship like that. It was a no-brainer. I'm like, this person, like, they're not a friend. They don't even like me. So that was not hard to walk away from. So disdain, contempt, hostility, aggression, squirrely behavior. So I no longer need somebody 9 months pregnant showing up at my doorstep with a DNA test to say, yes, in fact, your partner cheated on you. If they're being squirrely, if they're not emotionally safe, if I can't talk to them about something, if there's not accountability, if there's not honesty, if there's not trust, if there's, there's not this desire to actually be in a relationship, then it's time to go. And that can be kind of a scary place when you start tightening up your standards to that level, because it can seem like, well, gee, if I did that, I'd have nobody. But then that's concerning too, because everything that I just listed, I would say in relationships, I do no active addictions, no adultery, no abuse, and no rotten attitude. So if somebody's like perpetually negative, if they're, just like, if they just have a rotten attitude, tell me all these reasons why things won't work and this, that, and the other, and trying to drag me down. Like, I don't need that either. And I'll tell you, it's amazing how many people like aren't that. Like I really felt at first, if I got cut out all these people that had these qualities, I'd have no one. And for a while I did have no one, but then I got clarity on what I did want in my life. And that's when my life changed. And I began getting people that were solid, good people in my life. And there's tons of them out there. There really are. So, okay. Let me scroll up here. Because here's the deal too with people are talking about aggressive behavior and stuff. It's okay for a person to be upset. It's okay for them to be angry. It's okay for them to be frustrated. It's not okay for them to become abusive. It's not okay for us to become abusive. So that's the difference. So, with abusive people, they're like, well, but you did X, Y, and Z, or you did this or whatever. It's not okay. It's not okay to become intimidating, to start yelling, to be name calling, to be belittling, to cuss somebody out. That stuff's not okay. And for a lot of us, this is learning a whole new skill set in a lot of different ways. So I think for a lot of us that are more on the passive side of things, what tends to happen is our boundaries get violated. They get pushed, they get pushed, they get pushed. We get pushed, we get pushed, we get pushed. And then we confuse aggressiveness with assertiveness because it takes us getting to that point where we can't handle it anymore. And then that's when we say something. But we don't say something. We snap back and we yell, we cuss, we snap. And then we might even think, oh, well, I told them, I set them straight, I let them know. But that's aggressive. And there's a middle line there, and that's with being assertive. And truly learning how to be assertive, it's an ongoing practice. It's something I for sure am still working on. But the beauty of that is you can, hopefully if you get to the place where you really start becoming more assertive, you're doing it on a regular basis. So the stuff isn't building up. When little things happen, when there is that emotional safety in a relationship, you're able to bring things up and you're able to address them head on. And ideally, if you're with another person where there is that solutions orientedness, there is that mutuality, then these conflicts, when they come up and they can be resolved and they're talked about openly and honestly, once they're resolved, then the relationship becomes stronger. So, because conflict is going to happen when you've got two people in a relationship, but it's how they handle the conflict that makes all the difference. That's a great saying, Tim. I agree. He says, there's a quote I like: never forget the 3 different types of people in your life. Number 1, those who helped you in your difficult times. 2, those who left you in difficult times. And 3, those who put you in difficult times. Yes, that is so spot on. That is so spot on, because that's very, very different. And when a person is in an abusive relationship, abusive people, their worldview is so skewed and it's so pathological that it can really seem as though they do a great job of making their issue, their abuse, a relationship issue. It's that they didn't put you in difficult times, that you're going through difficult times. There's this sense of, well, we're going through this together, right? You're not perfect either. We're going through this together. And that's where all of this stuff just gets so twisted and so confusing for people that are in the middle of this. So yeah, if your spouse is, there's a pattern of like cheating and lying and siphoning funds and this kind of stuff. This isn't a relationship issue. That's an individual issue. And they're putting you in a difficult time. So see that stuff clearly for what it is. That's not a normal relationship issue. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, sorry, I've got some cleaning up to do here in the chat. Oh, well, thank you, Shelby. Shelby says, hi, Dana. I watched you last summer during a very difficult time. You helped me cope with my breakup, and I greatly appreciate you. Thank you. Well, you're very welcome, and I'm glad that I could help during that time, and I'm glad we could be here for you. Mariposa says, I should have left the first time he blew up at me. Well, you know, hindsight's always 2020. And this goes back to having that self-compassion and that grace. Because again, so this stuff is not taught. Boundaries are not taught. And it's so easy to get tangled up with somebody like this and to start justifying things and to think, well, they had a bad childhood, they had a bad day, they're stressed out, we have a new baby. There's all these different reasons. And I'll just give them another chance. And it's, you know, on and on and on. Nobody's perfect. All of these things that we tell ourselves, thinking that surely given enough love and time and therapy and religion or understanding that they'll come around. And it takes a person oftentimes a long time to realize that some people aren't interested in coming around. Okay, let's see here. Let me scroll up. Yeah, good job on that, Tanitra. She says, I have an aggressive coworker that was like this from the beginning as a new employee. No reason for it. Said something, it's not all about you, but I stepped away from them then. Yep. That's the cool thing. Down the road, you can see a lot of the stuff for what it is, and it's so much easier to disengage because you're like, this is not my first rodeo. I see ya. Like I see what you're doing, and I'm not playing this game. Like I'm done. I'm out of here. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care why you're doing what you're doing. It's not okay, and I'm not dealing with it, and I'm getting some distance. Shannon says, Dana, how do I stay motivated to stay no contact? I get so tempted to look at my blocked text folder in my phone. Can you, I don't know, depending on what kind of phone you have, can you change? Well, here's what I do. If you can change the name on the block text folder or on for your ex, for emails or what have you, change it to something that'll remind you that there's nothing but pain here. So, for example, so for mine, I changed his name to Pet Cemetery to remind myself, like, Dana, what the love, the amazingness that you thought you had when that died and it was buried, and what came back is not what you thought it was. Like, this is just evil. This is evil, malicious, crazy awfulness. And this is not what you thought you had. And this is not what you want. This is some Pet Cemetery stuff. And that's like, that's not a relationship. It's some stuff that needs to just stay dead, you know? So naming it, things like that, that can remind you, or letting yourself know, like, this is, if you can slow it down and remind yourself of all it's going to be is pain. You go to the Facebook page, you go check those texts. It's only going to be pain. And again, like, you can tell yourself little phrases like, not today, Satan. Like, I'm not going to fall for it. I know I'm going to get in there, and it's going to be a bunch of these saccharine sweet promises and everything that I'd want to hear. And it's all just, it's just lures me in, but I'm not going to fall for it. So then do something different. Yeah. Do something different. Like, and it helps if you can think about this ahead of time. Like, okay, well, what can you do? Can you go on YouTube? Can you watch some videos? Can you call a friend? Can you, you know, what's something positive that you can do instead? Like, get a plan in place for those times that nostalgia does kick in and that you do, or try to play it out. Like, there was one commercial that I forget what it was. Snickers maybe, or they would play out these different ideas. Like, yeah, we should totally do that. And then they'd start visualizing like how this would work. And it was always like, ooh, you know what? Maybe not. And then they would do something different. If you can play it out in your mind of, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm going to open this up and I'm going to read them. And it's going to be all of these telling me everything that I want to hear, or it's going to be insulting me. And you can slow it down and play it out in your mind. Once you play that out, then you end up contacting them, and then they make your life a living hell, or it's nothing but games, or it's nothing but chaos and nonsense. Then you can sort of be like, oh, right. That's why. Like, that's why that relationship isn't still going, because it's chaos and foolishness. And I'm done. Ooh, I like that. Karen says, yeah, you can pick a mantra to stay away from your ex. Mine was, there is no healthy reason to have him in my life at any level ever again. Yes. Shelby, that is a great question, asks, if a person grows up in a dysfunctional home and experiences a lot of abuse and trauma, how long does it take to learn and develop the mental and emotional tools you never had the chance to foster? Well, here's my 2 cents on it. Is I think because this stuff is not taught, even if a person grows up in an amazing home, Norman Rockwell life, parents happily married, no chaos, everybody, like everything's amazing, okay? They grew up like that. Unless this stuff it's great if some of the stuff is role modeled for people, right? Like how to fight in a healthy way, how to have disagreements in a healthy way, how to assert yourself, how to be good to your spouse. Like it's helpful if that stuff is role modeled, but even the Norman Rockwell people of the world out there, society is dysfunctional. Like there is no escaping this. The only way for anybody to escape this is through education, through truly spelling it out. Because there's no shortage of well-intended bad advice out there from people. It's so easy to get tangled up in that, because they especially I think a lot of this well-intended bad advice comes from people who had that Norman Rockwell life, because they cannot even fathom another person that could be so malicious and damaging and dysfunctional and spiteful and hurtful. For a normal, decent person, they just think, well, of course, oh, your mother really didn't mean that. All mothers love their children. Or, oh, they justify stuff, and they don't even realize they're doing it because they just don't have any frame of reference for anything dysfunctional. So honestly, in some ways, growing up in dysfunction almost prepares a person better, because you realize, hey man, there's a lot of stuff out here that is not okay. Like this is not cool. This is not cracking. Like I do not want this in my life, and I don't want to repeat this. So the fact that you're even aware of it is so huge. And you probably heard me talk about this before. I'm a really big believer that healthy boundaries, standards, deal breakers, and assertive communication is only forged through the fire. It's only found on the other side of this, because we grow up in a dysfunctional society. And a lot of these well-intended bad advice messages and ways of looking at the world, they fly under a person's radar for decades, if not their whole life, until like their whole way of looking at the world works as long as they're around other functional people. And then it completely breaks down into chaos when they come across somebody that's abusive or a scam artist or what have you. So I think learning these skills, if it was laid out in a very clear path, which a lot of this stuff isn't, and that's one of the things I'd like to do in my lifetime. At least, obviously lay it out to the best of my understanding. I don't have it all figured out either, but I would say a person could, if you're motivated, I mean, if that's a thing too, like a person, you got to be motivated to do this, right? Because it requires change, and change is painful and uncomfortable, and nobody's really motivated to do that unless you're really forced into doing it. So I would say if they're hungry to change, they're motivated, they love this stuff, they're getting comfortable with reality, they're getting comfortable with introspection and examining their own behavior, and they're enjoying it. Like when you can get to that place where you're like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. I never realized X, Y, and Z about myself. That's so messed up. I can't believe I was doing that. How cool. Like how cool that I realized this now, because now I can start doing something different. When a person's at that place and they're just craving this personal growth and this introspection, I would say they can really start making radical changes in their life within the first few weeks. And I guess here's the thing too, is all of these, it's a process. It's not an event. Like everything else, very few things in life are truly an event. It's this process. So it's this journey of like learning new skills and learning empowering skills and unlearning the disempowering stuff. And all of these skills stack on each other. So that's cool. Like you don't need to have massive change in order to have a massive difference in your life. It's like, if you think about it like a trajectory, if you just change your life 1 or 2 degrees, like you just implement a few of these different strategies that we talk about on here, you follow that line out, and a few months or weeks or whatever from now, you're at a very different place. That's what's so cool. Like you don't have to have this radical, learn everything all at once in order to have massive change. Just a few things here and there can make an ocean of difference. So I think to really start getting things down to a workable, life-changing level, it's hard. It's always a practice. But I think if you can treat it as a journey, and if you can treat it as a journey, and if you have people in your life that you're able to discern whether or not a person's emotionally safe, like you don't even need to figure out, like, are they a narcissist? Are they a sociopath? Are they abusive? Like just figuring out, okay, what does an emotionally safe person look like to you? That's going to be somebody that you can be open and honest and have that sincere, solutions-oriented communication with. Having those people in your life that things can be resolved. So as things come up, and odds are that kind of a person is going to be very personal growth oriented as well. So as things come up and you're talking about them, and you're owning your part. Wow, I said something hurtful. That was not my intention. I am so sorry. That won't happen again. Or yeah, you know what? I blew it. I handled that situation the best I could, and it still caused you pain. And that I'm just sorry. I'm sorry. It was uncomfortable. Whatever. You're owning your stuff. Then they feel like they can be honest with you, and then things can deepen. So a lot of it's, I guess what I'm saying is, it's starting to really consciously go about choosing the right people in your life, to be very intentional about who you're putting in your inner circle, and then really cultivating those relationships and working on having that open communication, and then staying open to that self-reflection, because we're all learning. And, it's hard. It's difficult to admit when we did something wrong, or, so just finding people that are supportive of you as you're going through this, and being supportive of yourself. But the basics, I would say, the basic skills that I think really can radically change somebody's life for the better. knowing when you're being treated in a way that's not okay with you. Okay. That includes knowing when you're being mistreated. That includes knowing when you're being abused, but you can back that up further and just knowing when you've had a boundary crossed. And that doesn't matter what their intentions were. It doesn't matter if, they're a narcissist or whatever. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're aware of, hey, you know what? That wasn't comfortable. And so now, because nobody else knows where our boundaries are a very individual thing to an extent, right? Like there's egregious behavior that's within the realm of every adult knows not to do certain things. But if we're talking like little things, like somebody tells you an off-color joke, or they, I don't know, your coworker pats you on the knee, somebody does something that's kind of like on that fringe of, it doesn't, if it doesn't work for you, then realizing this is a boundary violation for me. And I'm just going to say something like, hey, I don't appreciate jokes like that. Or, hey, like, don't touch me. So whatever, like you're able to address it. So I guess knowing when you're being treated in a way that's not okay with you, knowing, I think we talked about this last week, understanding the drama triangle, I think can be really helpful, that understanding that there's different roles that people play. And so the drama triangle, it's, like a triangle. And then on each side, you've got the role of, you've got victim, persecutor, and rescuer. And whenever we're playing any one of those three roles, we're in drama. And the way out of that drama Bermuda Triangle is through boundaries, standards, deal breakers, and assertive communication. So, yeah, I guess, okay, understanding the drama triangle, understanding what assertive communication looks like and what it doesn't look like. So for example, assertive communication, it's using I statements. So instead of saying, well, you did X, Y, and Z, that's blaming, putting it on you. I'm not comfortable with that. Or yeah, basically like, yeah, I'm not okay with that, or I'd really prefer this, or what have you. So really kind of owning your perceptions, owning your experience. I guess getting clear on boundaries is a big one. Starting to tune inward to knowing like where you're bound, just getting clear with yourself, like where are your boundaries and where are your deal breakers and standards for stuff. That kind of, that'll get you, that'll really point you on the path. That'll give you a lot to chew on for quite a while. And trying to think, we have book club last Thursday of every month. I need to go work on my notes for like the last handful of books. I just kind of hit a wall with all that stuff and stopped doing it because I really didn't think anybody was even reading them. So like I just kind of quit doing them because it was a lot of work on my end. But now that I know people are reading them, and I'll start doing them again. But that can be a great way if you're kind of wanting a crash course to a lot of this stuff. If you go to my website, thriveafterabuse.com/book club, I believe it is, there's links to all my notes over the past, I think 3 years now. So that's a good chunk of books. And these notes are pretty extensive. And even if you don't want to read my notes, but you just want to see the books, you can still see all the books. And then, because sometimes a lot of this stuff, I feel like if you don't even know what you're looking for, you're fumbling in the dark. So, that book list, I think, is a really solid start for a lot of this stuff. Let's see here. And I'm not going to talk about that. There's something that I've been working on that maybe will be at a pretty solid place by, what month is this? March, April, May, possibly May, for people that want to start their own maybe like in-person groups or even online groups. So there's some stuff that I'm working on, there's some stuff that I'm working on that if you want to start your own group, just resources that you can have that people can start having these discussions in their area. So I'll let you know when we get closer to that. Let's see here. And I think let's do one more question. And then we will go into our guided meditation. How about that? Aisha says, do you think that your abuser can turn the tables around and make it seem like you're the abuser? If so, what could you do? They do this often because in their mind, they are always, they're never at fault. There's no accountability. So very common for them to make it seem like they're the victim of a situation. And what can be crazy making for everybody involved is if they are doing things to provoke you. They're not, they've cheated on you a dozen times, and then you think that they've said that they wouldn't do it again, and then you find out they're messaging other women, and you're just, and they won't give you any answers. It's like talking to a brick wall, and you're just getting more and more enraged, and you're trying to get, you demanding answers, and they're not telling you anything. Like that kind of stuff can push any sane person to the limit. And then what tends to happen is when they're not giving you answers and clarity and validation, and then you explode, then they spin that around, and then they're like, you're the abuser. And so it can be really confusing for people that are in relationships like this, because they're like, well, maybe I am. I did verbally attack this person, or I physically attacked them, and I guess I am the problem, right? It can be really confusing to people that are in the relationship, and it can be really confusing to other people like friends, family, the police, that kind of stuff too. If you're being accused of being the abuser, I would really try to get things, try to get a witness to your experience as much as you possibly can. So, and keep a paper trail. If you have to communicate, doing it through email, through text messages, through voicemails, really trying to limit any type of like he said, she said situation. With friends and family, people are always going to take sides with stuff. And the people that are not going to ever take your side, or they're just never going to take your side. It might be his friends, his family that are going to support. People are so dysfunctional. Like they will enable and support all kinds of abusive, awful behavior until the bitter end. So I wouldn't waste your time and energy with those kinds of people. Those that are in your inner circle, I would encourage you to focus on your character and not on your reputation. Your reputation, that's something that anybody can make an attack on a person's reputation. Those that really know you, they know your character. And they might have issues with some of your behavior that might impact your reputation. But if they know the core of you and they're like, this is my character, then they have more context. So I'd focus on having good character and let them know that, yeah, this person's saying, the people that are in your inner circle, yeah, they're saying all kinds of awful things that are not true. And if you guys ever have any questions about things that he's saying, like, I would hope that you would ask me, because, what he's saying is he's a liar. Is one of the reasons I'm not with this person anymore. He's a pathological liar and crazy. So yeah, he's going to lie and do crazy things. That's why I broke up with him. Okay, one more question. This is a good one. Mariposa says, do you really think narcissists have respect or believe in God, being so full of themselves, or do they think that they are God? I do not think, I think that they could have like a very superficial understanding of God. It's weird because there's quite a few, like, I would say spiritual narcissists. There's a lot of them on YouTube, where, man, to listen to them talk, they sound so insightful and self-aware and so spiritual. And then you start watching their stuff for long enough and you're like, this person is completely delusional. They are not in touch with reality whatsoever. But boy, is it really wild because they can really talk a good game. So in my opinion, if a person's going to truly have to know about God, like that, the educational component, right? If this is what this religion is, this is what this God according to this religion does, that kind of stuff, anybody can read that in a book. But, excuse me, but to truly understand it would, I think, to truly have a relationship with God would mean you'd have to, there's some level of submission. Like you'd have to be able to put your own, wants and needs aside and be able to follow kind of like that moral code. And it's like with any relationship, right? Like there's got to be that sense of mutuality and that open, honest, sincere communication. Like there's got to be these things. And it's the same thing if you're going to really know God. My grandfather was a narcissist and he was also a minister, and he knew the Bible inside and out. And you would not have guessed the stuff that he was doing, Friday to Saturday. So yeah, he knew of God. He had no relationship with God, because if you really have a relationship with God, I think it changes a person. It works in your heart and it changes your behavior. And you can see if a person truly follows their faith by their actions. To say, it's bizarre to me when people are saying, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, or I'm whatever, I'm this faith. But then, Monday through Saturday, they're lying, they're cheating, they're stealing, they're just running amok. And it's like, well, you do realize that just going to church 1 hour a week, it's bizarre. It's like the mental, it's like the adult equivalent of a little kid running and being like, base, like, you can't get me because I'm on base. And, I don't think that God works like that. I think God understands a person's heart, and those actions, your actions change. So, I don't know. It's actions over words. People can say all kinds of things. They can profess all kinds of things, and they don't change one bit. But that's the worst kind too, because then if you've got like a narcissist like that, then they think they're forgiven. So then they're even less accountable. It's weird, right? Like a person, if a person has this unhealthy ego, they will twist everything in order to make it work for them, in order to make themselves not accountable. And religion is a great way for a lot of people to do that, unfortunately. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, I think anybody that is claiming to be special, unique, special and unique, that, and like if they're a guru, they claim to be God, they claim to be a prophet of God, they claim to have a direct connection to aliens, that they can channel other beings, that they are psychic, any of that kind of stuff. You're just heads up. Like, this is not this. It's a problem. You're getting into a problem. So. Kenzie. Okay, just for real. Last question for Kenzie. Kenzie says, this is what I'm dealing with right now. He twists scripture. We both have YouTube channels. I'm afraid of retaliation. I would just lay out your understanding. I don't know, I'm missing some context of what you're saying, but I would let the argument stand for itself. So I would try to use this as an opportunity for, okay, if this person's twisting scripture into something really malignant, to address, you don't have to call him out or his channel, but you can just say, this is what this scripture says. Here are some different interpretations of it. Like I would try to roll with it and make it into like a kind of like a teachable moment kind of thing, because odds are if he's doing this and really skewing this kind of stuff into a problematic way, then probably a lot of other people are too, or they've at least thought about this kind of scripture in that way. So if you feel like, boy, I think they're taking it out of context, I really feel like this is what the true meaning of this is, and it's a lot more good and benign and empowered, then I would address that. There's a channel out there called Jews for Judaism that I really enjoy. I'm not Jewish, like but I really enjoy this guy's channel. He's a rabbi, and it's fascinating. So he'll talk about, he does this, like he'll talk about different scriptures or concepts and why Jewish people do things in a certain way, and like his understanding of it. It's seriously fascinating. I listen to this guy hours every single week. And like I said, I'm not even Jewish. I just think it's interesting. So you never know who your message might reach. And, if you have, try to just run your own race, and focus on your stuff and who you want to reach with your own message. And if anybody comes at you that's trying to drag you down, or I would just try to have the attitude of anything that you do, it's going to be a teachable moment, and you're going to use it for your highest and greatest good, and for the highest and greatest good of other people that are finding your channel. That's all any of us can do. So, but I wouldn't take action from fear, because we have no control over what this other person does. So just focus on being the most empowering you can to your community, I guess. Okay, good deal. Keep me posted too, Kenzie. I'll be curious to know how all that kind of pans out. Okay, so with that said, we're over, but let's take some time. We'll do our guided meditation for tonight, and then I will see you guys next Tuesday we didn't have the live stream on this week, but we'll have it next week, Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It'll be me and Angie over on my channel. So with that said, take a moment, find someplace comfortable, whether that's a chair, whether that's you're able to lay down. Take some time for you to be fully present in this moment. Focusing on your breath as you settle into this moment. Being fully present in the moment means releasing any anxiety about the future. It means releasing any stress, regret, or anxiety about the past. It means being fully present in the here and now. Realizing that in this moment, this is your time. This is the only thing that you have to do right now. And you don't even have to do this. But this is the only thing that you've got going on. Things that have already happened have already happened. And things that have yet to happen haven't happened. You're in this moment. You are here. It's okay to relax. It's okay to be present. Now let's take a series of breaths. In through your nose. And out through your mouth. With each inhale, allowing that oxygen to go deeper, deeper down into your lungs, into the bases of your lungs, allowing your chest to completely rise and fall easily and effortlessly with each breath. Letting your body grow heavy. Let any remaining stress or tension just float away. Now bringing your attention to your forehead. Relaxing your forehead, your eyebrows, your eyes, your cheeks and your jaw. Allowing your jaw to fall open, for your tongue to fall from the roof of your mouth. Feeling the heaviness of your face and your neck as you allow your body to start to relax. Relaxing your shoulders and letting them drop down and back. Relaxing your arms, your forearms, your hands and your fingers. Feeling the weight of your hands and your arms as you let them relax. Allowing your hands and your arms to fall into any position that is the most comfortable for you. Bringing your attention to your chest. Relaxing your chest. Allowing it to expand. Relaxing your stomach. Loosening any tension or anxiety that you might be holding there. Relaxing your hips and your thighs, your calves, your feet and your toes. Allowing your legs to fall into whatever position is the most comfortable for you. Now taking a moment, noticing the heaviness of your body as you allow yourself to relax. And if you find your attention wandering, which it will most likely do, just easily and effortlessly bring your attention back to this present moment. Let's be here now, not in the past, not in the future, but in this moment, in your body, breathing. Now let's visualize a waterfall off in the distance. You can see it and you can hear it. The water is beautiful, shiny, silver, misting as the water cascades over the rocks. Now visualize a backpack that you're holding. And that backpack is full of any remaining stress or tension that you might be holding. Notice how heavy that backpack is. Let's decide now. We can go ahead and take that backpack off. We're just going to set it down. We know exactly where it is and where it will be. And when we're done here, you can always come back and pick it up again. That it's okay for right now to set it down. It's okay to feel light and to feel joyful. It's okay to be in the present moment. So if you haven't already, go ahead and put that backpack down. And if you feel like it, give yourself a little smile, just acknowledging that you were able to do that. Now let's start walking towards that waterfall. With each step, the rushing water gets louder. And you know that this waterfall is peaceful, that it's cleansing and that it's healing. And as you continue to move forward, knowing that as you walk underneath it, it's going to easily and effortlessly wash away anything that you're ready for it to wash away. Any anger, hurt, frustration, tension, anything that you're ready to let go. It's willing and able to do this. So as you start to make your way through, visualizing how good that water feels as it cascades down over you, down over your shoulders and your arms, allowing any of these emotions that you've been holding on to for so long that are ready to come off. It's almost just like mud, just easily and effortlessly just being washed away. Noticing how different you feel, how much lighter that you're able to feel. Noticing that there's other people on this side of the waterfall. People that have been through things very similar to you. And that you're not alone. And feeling the relief of that connection with others. Realizing that there's a lot of good connection that can be made besides what we've been through. Looking around and just acknowledging and appreciating all of the differences of the people here. Noticing all of these smiling faces. This is everybody's time that they can put their backpack down and be in this space, in this beautiful space together. Feeling how much lighter and cleaner you feel. How grounded you're feeling in yourself for perhaps the first time in a long time. And in this space, it's whatever you want it to be. Maybe there are flowers in here. Maybe there are some different animals in here. Maybe there are some rainbows in here. It's whatever connects you to everything that's good and right in the world. You can choose to stay in here for as long as you would like. And you can also choose to come in here whenever you would like. This space is your space and it's always available to you. So now that you know that this space exists and it's always here for you, let's go ahead and come on back. Open your eyes when you're ready. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And we do this every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I look forward to seeing you guys next Wednesday. Have a wonderful night, and we'll see you next week. So lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal. So take care. Good night.